I'm standing by my birthday cake, surrounded by family and friends, when my mom leans over and whispers something in Dad's ear. His face goes white, then red with rage. Without warning, he shoves me violently. I crash into the dessert table. Cake smears across my dress, glass shatters everywhere. Dead silence fills the room. Then I laugh. Not a nervous laugh, but a cold, knowing laugh that makes everyone freeze. My name is Hazel Richardson. I'm 26 years old, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But my mother had just told my father the one secret that would destroy our family. Except it'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Before we dive into how I orchestrated the complete destruction of my own family, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people closest to you, hit that like button. And subscribe, because this story gets darker than you can imagine. Trust me, you won't believe what happens next. 3 years earlier, my life looked perfect from the outside. We were the Richardson family of Portland, Oregon, the kind of family people envied at country club dinners and charity galas. My father, Roger Richardson, was a successful real estate developer who'd built half the luxury condos in the Pearl District. He was stern, demanding, but everyone respected him. He wore expensive suits, drove a black Mercedes, and his handshake could seal $1 million deal. My mother, Constance Richardson, was the epitome of elegance. She never left the house without perfect makeup, designer clothes, and that practiced smile she'd perfected over 28 years of marriage. She ran charity luncheons, organized fundraisers, and made sure everyone knew the Richardson name meant class and sophistication. My older brother Theodore, who everyone called Theo, was the golden child. Head followed Dad into the real estate business right after college, worked his way up to vice president by 30, and was engaged to his high school sweetheart, a blonde named Melissa who looked like she stepped out of a bridal magazine. Theo had Dad's sharp business mind and Mom's charm. He could walk into a room and own it within minutes. Then there was me. I was the artist, the dreamer, the daughter who chose gallery management over corporate success. I loved contemporary art, spent my weekends at exhibitions, and managed a small but respected gallery in the Alberta Arts District. I was different from the rest of them, and I always felt it. Our home was a beautiful colonial-style house in the West Hills, with a view of downtown Portland and Mount Hood in the distance. White columns framed the entrance, perfectly manicured gardens surrounded the property, and inside, everything was pristine. Mom insisted on fresh flowers in every room, orchestrated furniture that looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest, and maintained a household so perfect it felt like a museum. We had weekly family dinners every Sunday evening. These weren't warm, comfortable gatherings. They felt more like board meetings where everyone reported on their accomplishments and Dad evaluated our worth. Mom was obsessed with appearances and what the neighbors thought. If the lawn guy came a day late, she'd be on the phone complaining for an hour. If I wore jeans to a family event, she'd give me that tight-lipped look of disappointment. Everything had to be perfect, controlled, managed. But over the months leading up to that phone conversation, I overheard, I'd started noticing cracks in the facade. Small things that didn't add up. Mom's smiles seemed faker, more forced. Dad worked later and later, sometimes not coming home until after midnight. I'd hear whispered arguments through walls, voices rising, and then suddenly cutting off when someone walked by. One afternoon in late September, I stopped by the house unannounced to pick up some art supplies I'd stored in the garage. Mom's car was in the driveway, so I let myself in through the side door. As I walked through the kitchen, I heard her voice coming from Dad's study. She was on the phone, and something about her tone stopped me in my tracks. Her voice was different, warmer, softer, genuinely happy in a way I hadn't heard in years. She was laughing, that real kind of laughter that comes from deep in your chest. I pressed myself against the hallway wall and listened. "I can't wait to see you tonight, Jay," she said, her voice dropping to something intimate and secret. "No, hell be at that zoning meeting until at least 9. Well, have plenty of time." There was a pause, then she laughed again. "Stop it. You know what you do to me." "Yes, the usual place. I'll wear that dress you like." My stomach dropped. J. Not R for Roger. Someone else. I stood there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. She said goodbye, something sweet and affectionate, and I quickly slipped back outside before she could discover me. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel. My mother was having an affair. Perfect, elegant, charity organizing Constance Richardson was cheating on my father. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through explanations, justifications, denials. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe Jay was a woman friend. Maybe it was innocent. But deep down, I knew. I knew from the way her voice had changed, from the secrecy, from the lies about where Dad would be. I should have confronted her that day. Instead, I started watching, and what I discovered would change everything. I became a detective in my own family's life. It started small. I'd drive by the house at odd times, checking to see whose cars were there. I'd call Mom with random questions just to see if she was really where she claimed to be. She wasn't. 3 times in 2 weeks, she told me she was at yoga or getting her nails done, but when I drove by those places, her car wasn't there. I felt sick doing this, spying on my own mother, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know the truth. 2 weeks after that phone conversation, I followed her. It was a Thursday afternoon, and Shed told the family she had a charity committee meeting downtown. I watched her leave the house in her silver Lexus, dressed impeccably as always, and I followed at a distance. She didn't go downtown. She drove to the Pearl District and pulled into the parking garage of an expensive boutique hotel. I parked across the street and waited. 15 minutes later, a man walked into the hotel. He was younger than Dad, maybe early 40s, tall and handsome in that polished way wealthy men often are. Dark hair, expensive suit, confident stride. I sat there for 3 hours. When they finally emerged, they were laughing together, his hand on the small of her back in a way that made my skin crawl. They kissed goodbye in the parking garage, not a quick peck but a real kiss, the kind that spoke of intimacy and time spent together. I took photos with my phone, hands shaking with anger and disgust. After he drove away in a black Audi, I waited until Mom left before I went into the hotel. I showed the front desk clerk a photo of the man on my phone, claimed he was my husband, and I needed to know what name Head checked in under. The clerk, a young guy who looked sympathetic to my fake tears, quietly told me the room was registered to Julian Westbrook. I went home and spent the night researching Julian Westbrook. He was an art dealer, owned a gallery in the Pearl District that specialized in European contemporary work. He was divorced, no children, and he moved in the same wealthy social circles as my parents. I found photos of him at charity events, including several where my mother was also present. That's how they'd met. Through her charity work. My stomach turned as I realized how long this might have been going on, but I still wasn't prepared for what I found next. The affair was devastating enough, but my mother's betrayal went so much deeper. A week later, I went to the house when I knew Shed'd be out. I told Dad I needed to grab some old photo albums for a project, and he barely looked up from his computer, waving me upstairs. Instead of going to my old room, I went to Mom's office, a small, converted bedroom where she handled household finances and her charity work. My hands were sweating as I started going through her desk drawers. At first, I found nothing unusual. Bills, charity correspondence, receipts. Then, in the bottom drawer hidden under some old folders, I found a manila envelope. Inside were documents that made no sense. Property deeds for houses I'd never heard of, bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize, wire transfer records moving large sums of money. All recent, all within the last year. I photographed everything with my phone, my heart racing. There were photocopies of Dad's business documents, pages of passwords written in Mom's handwriting, access codes to his company accounts. I kept digging. In another folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a copy of my parents' prenuptial agreement, something I'd never even known existed. I skimmed through the legal language until I found the key clause. If either party committed adultery, they would receive nothing in the divorce. The faithful spouse would retain all marital assets. Mom had been planning this carefully. If Dad found out about her affair the normal way, Shed'd lose everything. But there was more. Much more. I found a personal diary, but the entries didn't sound like Mom's usual voice. They were calculated, describing instances of Dad's supposed abuse. Roger grabbed my arm again today, left bruises. He yelled at me in front of the staff, humiliating me. I'm afraid of what he might do. I stared at these entries, stunned. None of this had ever happened. My father had many faults, but had never laid a hand on my mother, never yelled at her in public. This was fiction, carefully constructed lies. Then I found the photos. Pictures of Mom with bruises on her arms, her face, her shoulders. Except I knew these were fake. I'd seen the makeup tutorials online, knew how easy it was to create realistic-looking injuries. There were also printed transcripts of recorded conversations between my parents, but they were heavily edited, sentences taken out of context to make Dad sound controlling and threatening. My mother was building a false case of domestic abuse. I sat on the floor of her office, surrounded by evidence of betrayal so calculated it took my breath away. This wasn't just an affair. This was a systematic plan to destroy my father, take his money, and escape with her lover. The prenup protected him if she simply cheated, so she was going to claim abuse instead. Get a divorce, use the fake evidence to paint herself as a victim, and take half of everything Dad had built. The wire transfers I'd seen were her slowly moving assets into accounts Dad didn't know about, preparing for the split. I carefully photographed every document, every diary entry, every fake photo. I put everything back exactly as ID found it, and left the house in a daze. My mother wasn't just unfaithful, she was dangerous, and I had no idea if I should tell my father or keep gathering evidence. I thought I knew my mother. The woman I was uncovering was a stranger, and a frightening one. Several weeks passed as I continued building my case against Mom. I couldn't bring myself to tell Dad yet. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was some explanation that would make sense of everything. But the evidence kept mounting. I tracked her to 3 more hotel meetings with Julian. I documented times she claimed to be one place but was actually somewhere else. I started keeping a detailed log, dates and times and photos. Then I noticed something else. Theo was acting strange around Mom. They'd always been close, the golden boy and the mother who adored him, but this was different. I'd catch them having whispered conversations in corners of the house during family dinners. When I'd walk into a room, they'd immediately stop talking and change the subject with forced casualness. Theo started avoiding eye contact with me. One Sunday, I saw him slip Mom a piece of paper across the dinner table when he thought no one was looking. She read it, nodded slightly, and tucked it into her purse. My suspicion grew. Was Theo covering for Mom's affair? Did he know? Or was it something worse? I decided to find out. 2 weeks later, Theo mentioned at dinner that he had a business meeting downtown on Thursday night. I waited outside his condo that evening and followed him. He didn't go to a business meeting. He went to a bar in the Pearl District, an upscale place with dim lighting and leather booths, and he met Julian Westbrook. I parked and watched through the window as my brother and my mother's lover sat together, laughing and talking like old friends. They shook hands warmly. Julian clapped Theo on the shoulder. They ordered drinks and settled in for what looked like a long conversation. My blood ran cold. Theo knew. Not only did he know about the affair, but he clearly had a relationship with Julian. This wasn't a confrontation or a warning. This was 2 people who knew each other well, who were comfortable together. I needed to know more. Over the next week, I started digging into Theo's finances. I had some access to Dad's company records because I'd helped out with an art installation in their lobby a year ago and still had a guest login to some of their systems. I started looking at Theo's expense reports, his project accounts, his budget allocations. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed small discrepancies. Payments to vendors that didn't quite match up with invoices, reimbursements for expenses that seemed inflated, bonuses paid to consultants I couldn't find any record of. I went deeper, staying up late into the night, tracking every transaction I could access. Over 2 years, Theo had been systematically embezzling money from Dad's company. Not huge amounts that would trigger immediate audits, but small, steady theft. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, occasionally larger sums of 15 or 20,000 disguised as legitimate business expenses. I added it all up, nearly $200,000, stolen from our father's company by his trusted son. The scope of the conspiracy became clear. Mom was planning to divorce Dad using false abuse claims to get around the prenup. Theo had been stealing from the company. And Julian was involved with both of them. But why? Why would Theo help Mom have an affair and steal from Dad at the same time? The pieces didn't fit until I found one more crucial detail. I was looking at Dad's upcoming projects when I saw it. A massive development deal in southeast Portland, a mixed-use complex that had been in planning for 3 years. The deal was scheduled to close in 3 months. Projected profit, $15 million. Everything clicked into place. They were waiting. Waiting for Dad's biggest deal to close, for the money to hit the accounts, and then they'd strike. Mom would file for divorce with her abuse claims, demand her settlement, and disappear with Julian. Theo would resign from the company, probably claiming some kind of hostile work environment, maybe even filing a lawsuit for emotional distress. Had already stolen $200,000. Together, they'd take Dad for millions and vanish. The timeline made perfect sense now. I had about 3 months to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to go straight to Dad and tell him everything. But I knew him. He'd explode. He'd confront them immediately, probably violently, and ruin any chance of stopping them legally. They'd deny everything, destroy evidence, and I'd end up looking like the crazy daughter making wild accusations. I needed ironclad proof, the kind that would stand up in court and couldn't be explained away. I needed a lawyer, but I couldn't use Dad's usual attorney without him finding out. I started building a relationship with Patricia Brennan, a lawyer friend of Dad's I'd met at several company events. She specialized in white-collar crime and had a reputation for being fierce and thorough. I'd run into her at a gallery opening and struck up a conversation about art. Over the next few weeks, I made sure to casually see her at other events, building trust and friendship. I needed her to like me, to see me as credible, before I could tell her what was really happening. I was playing a long game, and every move had to be calculated. They thought they were so clever, plotting and planning in secret. They had no idea I was 10 steps ahead, and when I was done, they wouldn't just lose. They'd be destroyed. I got careless. After months of careful surveillance and documentation, I made one critical mistake. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I'd convinced myself that Mom would be out at her supposed tennis lesson for at least 2 hours. I let myself into the house and went straight to her office. I'd done this several times before without incident, but this time I was so focused on photographing a new set of bank statements, I'd found that I didn't hear her car pull into the driveway. The office door opened behind me. "Hazel? What are you doing in here?" Mom's voice was calm, almost too calm. I spun around, phone in hand, bank statements spread across her desk. For a moment, we just stared at each other. My mind raced for an explanation, any plausible reason why I'd be going through her private papers. "I was looking for your recipe for that lemon cake," I said, my voice shaky. "I thought you might have it filed in here. It was a terrible lie." Mom smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The recipe box is in the kitchen, sweetheart. It always has been. You know that." She stepped into the office and I quickly put the bank statements back in the drawer, trying to arrange them exactly as they'd been. Mom watched every move I made. "Are you looking for something specific?" she asked. "No. I just got confused," I said, edging toward the door. "I'll check the kitchen." She moved aside to let me pass, but as I walked by her, she put a hand on my arm. Her grip was gentle but firm. "Hazel," she said softly, "if you ever need anything, you can always come to me directly. You don't need to go through my things." Her eyes held mine, and I saw the calculation there, the sharp intelligence that I'd underestimated. "Of course, Mom," I said. "Sorry for the confusion." I left the house and drove straight home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. She knew. Maybe not exactly what I'd found or how much I knew, but she knew I was suspicious, that I'd been snooping. I'd blown my cover, and now everything would change. I spent the rest of the day pacing my apartment, trying to figure out my next move. Should I go to Dad now with what I had? Was it enough? Would he believe me? 2 days later, things escalated. I came home from the gallery to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart hammered as I pushed it open. The place had been ransacked. Drawers pulled out, cushions thrown off the couch, books swept from shelves. I ran to my bedroom. My laptop was gone. The laptop that had all my evidence photos, all my documentation of Mom's affair and Theo's embezzlement. The backup drive ID kept hidden in my closet was also missing. They'd taken everything. I called the police and filed a report, but I knew it was useless. Nothing else was stolen. Not my TV, not my jewelry, not the cash I kept in my nightstand, just my laptop and backup drive. The officer who took my statement looked skeptical. "Usually burglars take the obvious valuables," he said. "This seems targeted." I agreed but couldn't tell him why. An hour after the police left, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, fear and anger coursing through me. They were threatening me now. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was full of fake concern. "Hazel, honey, your father told me about the break-in. Are you okay? Do you need somewhere to stay?" The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed she genuinely cared. "I'm fine, Mom," I said coldly. "Just some random burglary." There was a brief pause. "How strange that they only took your computer," she said. "You must have been working on something important." The implication was clear. She was telling me she knew exactly what had been taken and why. Within a week, things got worse. Theo started spreading rumors about me at Dad's company. I heard about it from an old colleague who still worked there. Theo was telling people I was unstable, that I'd been seeing a therapist for severe anxiety and depression, that I might have a drug problem. None of it was true, but the rumors spread quickly. He was laying groundwork, building a narrative that I was unreliable, mentally unwell, someone whose accusations couldn't be trusted. It was brilliant and cruel. The trap sprang shut when Dad confronted me at Sunday dinner. The whole family was there. Theo and Melissa, Mom looking elegant and concerned, and Dad with an expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment mixed with anger. "Hazel, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice tight. "Have you been taking money from the gallery?" My stomach dropped. "What? No, of course not." Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Sweetheart, we're just concerned. Mrs. Foster called your father today. She found some irregularities in the accounts. Adelaide Foster, the gallery owner, had found forged checks with my signature. Mom had planted them. I knew it instantly. Dad, I didn't do this," I said, my voice rising. "Someone is framing me." Theo shook his head sadly. "Hazel, maybe you should take a break. Get some help. We've all noticed you've been acting strange lately." I looked around the table. They were all staring at me with pity and suspicion. Mom and Theo had orchestrated this perfectly. I had no evidence anymore, no credibility, and now I looked like a thief and a liar. Dad suggested I take a leave of absence from the gallery while they investigated. I wanted to scream that this was all a setup, that Mom was having an affair, that Theo was embezzling, that they were the criminals, not me. But I had nothing to prove it. They'd taken my evidence and destroyed my reputation in one calculated strike. I agreed to the leave of absence because refusing would make me look more guilty. I left that dinner feeling completely defeated. They'd beaten me in round one. I was wounded, isolated, with my own father looking at me like I was a stranger. But wounded animals are the most dangerous, and I wasn't done fighting. Weeks passed in a fog of depression and isolation. I stayed in my apartment, barely eating, replaying every mistake I'd made. I'd lost my evidence, my reputation, and my family's trust. Mom and Theo had outmaneuvered me completely. I started to think maybe I should just give up, let them destroy Dad, and walk away from the whole toxic situation. Then, on a gray Wednesday morning, I received an email that changed everything. The sender was someone named Simone Westbrook. The subject line read, "We need to talk about Julian." My finger hovered over the delete button. This could be another trap, another move in their game. But curiosity won. I opened it. The message was brief. "I know about your mother and my ex-husband. I know what they're planning. I can help you, but we need to meet in person. I have information you need." Shed included her phone number and suggested a coffee shop in Northwest Portland, a public place that felt safer than some secret location. I spent 2 days debating whether to respond. It could be a setup. Simone could be working with Julian, trying to draw me out. But what did I have to lose at this point? I'd already lost everything. I texted her and agreed to meet on Saturday afternoon. The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. I got there early and positioned myself at a table in the back corner where I could see the door. When Simone walked in, I recognized her immediately from the photos I'd found online during my research on Julian. She was striking, probably in her mid-40s, with dark hair cut in a sharp bob and wearing an elegant charcoal suit. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd been knocked down but refused to stay down. She spotted me, walked over, and sat down without asking. "Hazel Richardson," she said. "It wasn't a question. I've been watching you watch them for months. You're not very subtle." I bristled at that. "If you've been watching me, why didn't you reach out sooner?" She smiled, but it was bitter. "Because I needed to make sure you were serious about taking him down. Julian has a way of charming people into backing off. I couldn't risk you being another one of his victims." Over the next 2 hours, Simone told me her story. She'd been married to Julian for 8 years. He'd swept her off her feet, romanced her, married her, and then slowly destroyed her. He'd convinced her to put her inheritance into joint accounts, then drained them while having affairs with at least 3 other women she knew about. When she finally filed for divorce, He'd hidden assets, lied to the court, and left her with almost nothing. She'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding her life and plotting revenge. "Julian is a con artist," she said. "He targets wealthy women, usually married, seduces them, convinces them to steal from their husbands, and then disappears with the money. Your mother isn't the first, and she won't be the last unless we stop him." I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Satisfaction because Mom was being played just like she was playing Dad. Pity because even though She'd betrayed our family, she was still my mother, and she was being manipulated by a professional criminal. I pushed the pity away. She'd made her choices. "Why do you want to help me?" I asked. Simone leaned forward. "Because taking down Julian means taking down his entire operation, and I can't do that alone. But together, we can destroy him and everyone working with him, including your mother and brother." She opened her bag and pulled out a tablet. "I still have access to Julian's cloud storage. He never changed the passwords after the divorce. Arrogant mistake on his part." She turned the screen toward me, and I saw folders full of files. Photos, documents, emails, everything I'd lost and more. "I have 3 years of evidence," she said. "The affair, the financial planning, his communications with your brother, all of it." I stared at the screen, hardly daring to believe it. "Why would he keep all this?" Simone laughed coldly. "Insurance. Julian always keeps records in case his marks try to turn on him. He uses it for blackmail if needed. He's careful, but he's also paranoid and meticulous. We formed an alliance right there in that coffee shop. Simone wanted Julian ruined, prosecuted, and imprisoned. I wanted my family exposed and Dad protected. Our goals aligned perfectly." She started sending me files over encrypted email that evening. Photos of Mom and Julian at hotels, time-stamped and dated. Hotel receipts with both their names. Text messages between them that were explicit and detailed. But more importantly, she had email chains between Julian and Theo discussing the embezzlement. Julian wasn't just Mom's lover. He was laundering Theo's stolen money through fake art sales. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my evidence file from scratch. But this time, I was smarter. I saved everything in multiple locations. Cloud storage, with encrypted passwords. Physical copies printed and stored in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. A backup hard drive hidden at a friend's house. They wouldn't catch me unprepared again. Simone became not just an ally but a friend. We'd meet regularly, comparing notes, planning strategy. She understood betrayal in a way most people didn't. We were both survivors of people we'd trusted, and that bond was powerful. Then Simone revealed something that changed the entire game. "Julian isn't the mastermind," she said one evening, as we sat in her apartment reviewing documents. "What do you mean?" I asked. She pulled up a series of emails. "Your mother thinks she's in control, that she's planning this divorce and escape. But Julian has been manipulating every move. Look at these dates. He approached her first, at that charity gala 2 years ago. He researched your father's business, your family's wealth, everything. He targeted your mother specifically because she was vulnerable and had access to significant assets. She showed me more evidence. Julian had done this before. 2 other times in the past 7 years. In Boston, Head romanced a banker's wife, convinced her to embezzle from her husband's accounts, and disappeared with over $3 million. The woman went to prison while Julian vanished. In Seattle, a corporate executive's wife fell for the same scheme. She ended up losing everything in the divorce and committed suicide 6 months later. Julian had changed his name slightly each time, moved to a new city, and repeated the pattern. He's a predator, Simone said. And your mother is just his latest victim. But that doesn't excuse what she's doing to your father and to you. I sat back, processing this new information. Part of me almost felt sorry for Mom. She thought she was in love, thought she was planning a new life. She had no idea she was being played by a professional con artist who would take everything and leave her with nothing. But Shed still made the choice to betray Dad, to frame me, to conspire with Theo. Whatever happened to her now, Shed earned it. We need to be careful, I said. If Julian is this good, hell see us coming, Simone nodded. That's why we strike when he's distracted, when he thinks he's already won. We let him think the plan is working, and then we pull the rug out from under all of them at once. We spent hours strategizing. The key was timing. If we exposed them too early, they'd scatter and lose our chance. If we waited too long, they'd complete their theft and disappear. We needed the perfect moment, a public confrontation where they couldn't run or hide, where all the evidence would come out at once and destroy them completely. What about your birthday? Simone suggested. It's in 2 months. Big public party, all the right people there. Your father, your brother, your mother, Julian, everyone in one place. I smiled for the first time in weeks. It was perfect. I had an ally now, and together we were building a case that would end them all. But Julian was a professional predator, and we were about to walk into his hunting ground. We'd have to be smarter, faster, and more ruthless than had ever been. As my investigation intensified with Simona's help, the stakes grew higher and the danger became real. It started with small things. I'd notice cars following me that would disappear when I tried to get a license plate number. I'd get hang-up calls on my phone at odd hours. Someone went through my mailbox. I knew I was being watched, but I couldn't prove it. Simone warned me to be careful. Julian doesn't like loose ends, she said. If he knows you're investigating, he'll try to intimidate you into backing off. One Thursday night in late October, I worked late at a friend's office helping her organize an art show since I was still on leave from the gallery. I left around 10, later than I'd planned. The parking garage under her building was nearly empty, my footsteps echoing off concrete as I walked toward my car. I had my keys in my hand, my bag over my shoulder, already thinking about the warm bath I'd take when I got home. I didn't hear him coming until it was too late. Someone grabbed me from behind, arm around my throat, hand reaching for my bag. I screamed and struggled, my keys falling to the ground. He was strong, dressed in dark clothes with a ski mask over his face, and he was specifically going for my bag. Not my jewelry, not my phone in my pocket, but the bag where I kept my backup USB drive with copies of evidence. "Give me the bag," he growled, yanking hard on the strap. I held on, screaming louder. We struggled, me kicking backward, him trying to choke me into submission. Then I heard voices, footsteps running. Other people from the building were coming. The attacker swore, shoved me hard into a concrete pillar, and ran. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, my throat burning. 2 men and a woman ran up to me, asking if I was okay, if they should call the police. I nodded, couldn't speak yet. The police came, took a report, looked around the garage for evidence. They found nothing. No cameras in that section, no witnesses except the people Hode scared him off, no description beyond average height, dark clothes, male. The officer taking my statement seemed sympathetic, but not particularly hopeful. "Probably just a junkie looking for drug money," he said. "You should be more careful parking in isolated areas at night." But I knew better. This wasn't random. Julian had sent someone to take my evidence or scare me into stopping. I called Simone as soon as the police left. "He knows," I said, my voice still raspy. "He knows I'm gathering evidence." There was a long pause on her end. Then, we need to move faster, she said. And you need protection. The next day, she introduced me to Walter Cunningham, a retired FBI agent who now worked as a private investigator specializing in white-collar crime. Walter was in his late 50s, with gray hair, sharp blue eyes, and the calm competence of someone who'd seen everything. He took my case seriously from the first meeting. Julian Westbrook, real name Julian Kovac, has a record, he said, pulling up files on his laptop. Nothing that stuck, always managed to slip away before prosecution, but we've had our eye on him for years. If you can help us nail him, I'm all in. Walter started following me, discreetly providing security. He also dug deeper into Julian's operation than Simone or I ever could have. What he found was terrifying. Julian wasn't just a con artist running romance scams. He had connections to organized crime, specifically money laundering operations up and down the West Coast. The stolen money from Theo wasn't just being hidden. It was being washed through a complex network of shell companies, fake art sales, and offshore accounts. This is bigger than your family drama, Walter told me in his office one afternoon. Julian is part of a criminal enterprise. Taking him down could expose dozens of people, millions of dollars in illegal activity. But it also means he's more dangerous than you realized. These people don't hesitate to hurt anyone who threatens their business. I felt my stomach drop. I'd thought we were dealing with a con man and my backstabbing family. I hadn't realized we were up against organized criminals who'd killed people for less than what I was planning. Meanwhile, Mom was escalating her own psychological warfare against me. Shed started telling extended family that I was mentally unstable, planting seeds with aunts and uncles, cousins, family friends. At a cousin's wedding I attended, people looked at me with pity and concern. My aunt pulled me aside and asked gently if I was getting help, if I needed anything. "Your mother is so worried about you," she said. "She mentioned you've been having some difficulties." The lies were spreading, infecting every relationship I had. Mom was systematically isolating me, making sure that when the final confrontation came, no one would believe anything I said. Then came the drugs. I was driving to meet Simone one afternoon when I got pulled over for a broken taillight I didn't know about. The officer was polite, but thorough. When he asked to search my car, I had no reason to say no. I'd done nothing wrong. He found a bag of cocaine under my passenger seat. I stared at it in shock. "That's not mine," I said. "I've never done drugs in my life." The officer looked at me with that expression I'd seen too many times lately, the one that said he didn't believe me. "Mom, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." I called Dad from the police station, my one phone call. He came, furious and disappointed. The charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence proving the drugs were mine, but the damage was done. Dad looked at me like I was a stranger. "What's happening to you, Hazel?" he asked. "The stealing, the drugs, the erratic behavior. Your mother thinks you need intensive treatment." I wanted to scream that Mom had planted those drugs, that this was all part of their plan to discredit me. But I had no proof, and anything I said would sound like the desperate excuses of an addict in denial. That night, Theo called me. Head never called me directly before, always communicated through family channels. "Hazel," he said, his voice gentle and concerned. "I'm worried about you. We all are. Maybe you should check yourself into a facility, get some help before things get worse. We've been talking, and Dad is considering having you involuntarily committed if you won't go willingly. We're scared you might hurt yourself." The threat was clear. Get out of the way, or, well, have you locked up in a psychiatric facility where no one will believe anything you say. It was brilliant and terrifying. I met with Walter that evening, shaking with rage and fear. "They're trying to have me institutionalized," I said. "Can they do that?" Walter nodded grimly. "With the right doctors and enough false evidence, yes. They can make you look incompetent, dangerous to yourself. It's a classic move in family financial battles. Discredit the person who might expose you." He looked at me seriously. "Hazel, you need to decide now. Either we go public with what we have, which might not be enough to convict them, or we stay the course and risk them succeeding in their plan first. It's your call." I thought about Dad, about how much he stood to lose. I thought about Julian and his history of destroyed lives. I thought about Mom and Theo's betrayal. how they'd turned everyone against me. Walter was right. We had to stay the course, but we also had to move faster. We stick with the plan, I said. My birthday party, 2 months from now. We expose everything in public where they can't run or hide or have me committed. But between now and then, I need to play along. Let them think they've broken me. Walter advised me to pretend to agree to counseling, to act defeated and compliant. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, swallowing my pride and anger. But I did it. I called Dad and told him I'd start seeing a therapist, that I recognized I needed help. I apologized to Mom and Theo at the next family dinner, tears in my eyes, voice shaking. They smiled and hugged me, victory clear in their eyes. They thought they'd won. They had no idea I was about to burn their entire world down. 3 weeks before my birthday party, I launched my counterattack. Every move was carefully calculated, designed to make Mom, Theo, and Julian nervous, sloppy, desperate. Walter called it applying pressure to create cracks in their alliance. I called it revenge. The first move was subtle. Walter had connections at the IRS from his FBI days. He arranged for an anonymous tip about suspicious financial activity in Dad's company, specifically related to Theo's expense accounts. 2 weeks later, Theo received notice that he was being audited. I watched him at family dinner that Sunday, saw the panic barely concealed behind his confident facade. His hands shook slightly as he cut his steak. Mom kept glancing at him, a silent conversation passing between them. After dinner, I conveniently left my phone in the dining room and went back to retrieve it. I heard them in the kitchen, voices low and urgent. "They can't find anything if you've covered your tracks properly," Mom was saying. "You said it was untraceable." Theo's response was sharp with fear. "Nothing is completely untraceable. If they dig deep enough, they'll find the offshore accounts. Julian needs to move the money now." Perfect. The audit was forcing them to act faster than they'd planned, making them careless. It created urgency, and urgency led to mistakes. The second move was more direct. I staged a phone conversation, knowing Mom was in the house and would overhear. I spoke loudly enough to be heard through the walls, talking to a fake lawyer about Dad supposedly planning to change his will. Yes, he mentioned he wants to review the family trust structure. Something about ensuring assets are protected and distributed fairly. He asked me to gather all the financial documents. I paused, listening to imaginary responses. Next week? That soon? All right, I'll let him know I found everything he needs. I hung up and waited. Within hours, Mom had called me with a casual question about what Dad and I had been discussing. I played innocent, mentioned the will review vaguely. The seed was planted. That night, Walter confirmed through his surveillance that Mom immediately called Julian in a panic. She believed Dad was about to change his will and estate planning, which would ruin their timeline. If Dad restructured his assets before they could file for divorce, they might end up with nothing. Mom started pushing to accelerate everything. She made 3 trips to see Julian in 2 days. Their meetings became longer, more intense. Simone, monitoring Julian's communications, reported that he was getting nervous. Too much pressure, too many things happening at once. He started making mistakes, sending unencrypted emails that Walter could intercept. The third move was my favorite because it came from Simone. She contacted Julian's Seattle girlfriend, a woman named Natasha Porter who believed she was Julian's only serious relationship. Simone sent her photos of Julian and Mom together, hotel receipts, romantic text messages. Natasha's response was explosive. She started calling Julian constantly, demanding explanations. She threatened to expose him to his business partners, to call the police, to ruin him. Julian was suddenly trying to manage 2 furious women while executing a multi-million-dollar theft. The stress was showing. Walter reported that Julian started drinking heavily, something he apparently never did when working a con. His trademark charm and smooth control were slipping. He made a crucial error, meeting with known money launderers in a public restaurant where Walter photographed the entire encounter. Evidence was piling up, not just of the affair and theft, but of Julian's criminal enterprise. This wasn't just going to destroy my family's conspirators. It was going to bring down an entire network. Meanwhile, I'd been carefully working on Patricia Brennan, Dad's lawyer friend. Over coffee dates and gallery visits, I slowly fed her concerns about changes I'd noticed in the family dynamics. Never direct accusations, always just a worried daughter observing things that seemed off. "Mom seems distracted lately," I'd say, and I noticed some irregularities in family accounts when I was helping Dad organize his office. Probably nothing, but it seemed strange. Patricia was smart and thorough. She started asking her own questions, doing her own quiet investigation into Mom's activities. She reviewed Dad's assets and discovered the money movements Mom had been making. Patricia brought her concerns to Dad privately, suggesting he might want to review certain accounts more carefully. Dad was still resistant to believing anything was seriously wrong, but seeds of doubt were finally planted. He started paying more attention, asking questions, noticing things he'd previously ignored. Then I made my boldest move. I staged a tearful reconciliation with Mom and Theo. I showed up at the house one Sunday before dinner, carrying flowers, my eyes red from manufactured crying. "I'm so sorry," I told them. "I've been so terrible lately. The therapist says I've been dealing with undiagnosed anxiety and depression, and I took it out on all of you. Can you forgive me?" Mom's face was a perfect mask of compassionate relief. She hugged me, and I had to fight not to stiffen in her embrace. Theo was more suspicious, studying me carefully, but he played along. "We're just glad you're getting help," he said. "We love you, Hazel." I asked them to help me plan my birthday party as a way to demonstrate my commitment to healing our family relationships. "I want a fresh start," I said. "Let's celebrate together, all of us, like things used to be." Mom loved this idea. She immediately took over planning, suggesting we rent a beautiful venue, invite everyone important in our lives, make it a grand celebration. Perfect. She was walking straight into my trap and decorating it beautifully herself. Theo agreed to handle the guest list and logistics. I watched them plan my party, knowing it would be the site of their complete destruction, and I smiled and thanked them and played the role of grateful, recovering daughter. Over the next 2 weeks, Walter helped me prepare evidence packages. Everything we'd gathered over months of investigation was organized, documented, and copied. Every photo, every bank record, every email, every receipt. We created separate packages for Dad, for Patricia, for the police, for the IRS, and for the FBI, who were now officially interested in Julian's money laundering operation. Each package was thorough, meticulously sourced, impossible to deny. We ran everything past Patricia without telling her why we were assembling it. Hypothetically, I asked her, if someone had evidence of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft, what would be the best way to present it? She helped us make the packages legally bulletproof. 1 week before the party, Julian finally panicked. Simone reported that he tried to convince Mom to move up their timeline, to file for divorce immediately, and take whatever they could get now before waiting for the development deal to close. Mom refused. She'd been planning this for 3 years, had suffered through years of what she considered a loveless marriage, and she wanted the full payoff. They argued viciously. Julian threatened to leave her, to take what money Theo had already stolen, and disappear without her. Mom realized she might lose everything, lose Julian, end up with nothing. She became desperate and vindictive in a way that made me almost feel sorry for her. Almost. The final pieces were in place. The party was planned for Saturday evening at an elegant event space overlooking the Willamette River. 100 guests, including Dad's business partners, Mom's charity circle friends, extended family, and carefully positioned allies. Walter would have hidden cameras throughout the venue. Simone would attend as one of my gallery clients. Patricia would be there as a family friend, though she now knew something significant was going to happen. The evidence packages were prepared and ready. I had one outfit picked out specifically for the occasion, expensive and beautiful because I wanted to look perfect when I destroyed them. The stage was set. In 7 days, at my birthday party, I would detonate a bomb that would obliterate them all, and I would smile while it burned. The day arrived, clear and beautiful for late November. The event space was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the city lights beginning to twinkle as the sun set over the river. Mom had outdone herself with the decorations. White orchids everywhere, elegant table settings, soft lighting that made everything look like a dream. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It was the kind of party that would be talked about in social circles for months. She had no idea it would be talked about for entirely different reasons. I arrived early, wearing a deep blue silk dress that Mom had helped me pick out, playing my role as the grateful daughter to perfection. I greeted guests as they arrived, smiling and hugging and thanking everyone for coming. Dad looked proud, his arm around my shoulders as he introduced me to his business partners. "My daughter's doing so much better," he told them. "We're very proud of her progress." Each word was a knife in my heart because I knew what was coming, knew that in a few hours his entire world would shatter. Mom was radiant in a cream-colored gown, playing the perfect society wife. She and Julian had been careful about their public interactions, but I noticed the glances they exchanged across the room, the subtle touches when they thought no one was watching. Theo arrived with Melissa, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. He found me immediately and gave me a hug that felt genuine enough to make me question for a moment whether I was doing the right thing. Then I remembered the embezzlement, the lies, the attack in the parking garage, and my resolve hardened. The party moved into full swing. Guests mingled, ate, drank, laughed. The string quartet transitioned to a pianist playing soft jazz. I moved through the crowd, positioning people exactly where I needed them. Patricia, near the small stage where speeches would be made. Simone at the bar with a clear view of the room. Walter outside, monitoring the cameras, head installed and coordinating with the FBI agents who were waiting for my signal. Everything was perfect. About an hour into the party, I saw Simone check her phone and then catch Mom's attention. Mom glanced at her screen and her face went completely pale. She looked across the room at Julian with an expression of pure betrayal. I knew what Simone had sent her. A photo, time-stamped from 3 days ago, showing Julian and Natasha in Seattle, kissing on a street corner, his arm possessively around her waist, the same way Head held Mom countless times. Mom's face cycled through shock, hurt, and rage in a matter of seconds. Julian noticed her staring at him and frowned, confused. He started moving toward her, but she turned away, heading for the bathroom. I followed, my heart racing. This was it. Everything was about to unravel exactly as Id planned. I intercepted her in the hallway outside the restrooms. "Mom," I said quietly. "We need to talk. Now." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. For a moment, she looked lost and broken, nothing like the calculating woman Id watched for 3 years. "Not now, Hazel," she said. "Please." "Yes, now," I said firmly. I pulled her into a small private room the venue used for coat storage. She followed without resistance, maybe too shocked by what she'd just seen to protest. Once the door closed, I faced her. "I know everything, Mom. The affair with Julian, the plan to divorce Dad with false abuse claims, Theo's embezzlement, the money laundering, all of it. I've known for 3 years." She stared at me, and I watched realization slowly dawn across her face. "You," she whispered. "The audit, the pressure, Natasha. You orchestrated all of this. You tried to destroy me," I said, my voice cold and controlled. "You planted drugs in my car, spread lies about my mental health, had me attacked. You framed me for theft at the gallery. You turned Dad against me. And for what? Money? A con artist who's playing you the same way he played his last 3 marks." Her face crumpled. She tried to deny it, but her heart wasn't in it. "Julian loves me," she said weakly. I almost laughed. "Julian is using you. He has another girlfriend in Seattle. Has planning to take all the money and disappear without you. You're nothing but another score to him, Mom. And you threw away your family, your integrity, everything, for a man who sees you as a paycheck." She slapped me, hard enough that my head snapped to the side. I didn't react, just stood there looking at her. "You have 2 choices," I said. "Come back to the party right now and confess everything to Dad in front of everyone. Tell the truth, face the consequences, and maybe it'll talk the prosecutor into considering leniency, or refuse, and I expose everything anyway. Either way, it's over. But at least if you confess, you maintain some shred of dignity." She was crying now, mascara running down her face. "You can't prove anything," she said. "After all this time, I have everything. Bank records, emails, photos, testimony from Julian's ex-wife, evidence from the private investigator I hired. It's ironclad, Mom. Patricia's already seen it. The FBI is outside waiting. You've lost. She seemed to collapse inward, all her elegance and control crumbling. You ungrateful little bitch, she hissed. After everything I did for you, raised you, loved you. I shook my head. Everything you did? You mean turning my father against me, trying to have me institutionalized? Having your criminal boyfriend's associates attack me? That's not love, Mom. That's abuse, and it ends tonight. She realized then that there was no way out, no clever escape, no one to manipulate into saving her. Shed lost, and id won. Instead of confessing, instead of taking the slightly less humiliating path id offered, she made the worst possible choice. She stormed out of the room and headed straight back to the party. I followed, my pulse racing. Everyone was watching now, sensing the drama, the tension. Mom marched directly to Dad, who was standing near the birthday cake with Theo and several business associates. I stayed back, watching. She leaned in close and whispered something in Dad's ear. I was too far away to hear the exact words, but I could guess. She was telling him that I was the problem, that I'd been stalking her, threatening her, that I was dangerous and unstable and trying to frame her for crimes I'd committed. One last desperate attempt to turn him against me. Dad's face transformed as she whispered. Confusion became shock, then anger, then rage. He pulled back and looked across the room directly at me. The entire party had gone quiet, everyone watching this family drama unfold. Dad strode across the room toward me, and I saw Theo moving to intercept him, but Dad waved him off. He reached me, and without a word, without asking for my side, believing whatever poison Mom had whispered, he shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, crashed into the dessert table. The beautiful tiered cake toppled, covering me in white frosting and raspberry filling. Crystal plates shattered on the hardwood floor. Champagne glasses fell, liquid and glass exploding everywhere. I lay there for a moment, cake smeared across my expensive dress, sticky and humiliated, and I felt every eye in the room on me. Then I started laughing. That cold, knowing laugh that had been building inside me for 3 years. The laugh of someone who's been beaten down, attacked, framed, and has finally won. Everyone froze. The room was silent except for my laughter. I stood up slowly, cake dripping off me, glass crunching under my shoes. I looked directly at Mom, then at Theo who'd gone pale, then at Julian who was edging toward the exit. "Thank you, Mother," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You just assaulted me in front of 100 witnesses because of your lies." "Patricia, did you get that on video?" Patricia held up her phone from where she stood by the stage. "Every second, Hazel." Dad looked confused, his anger suddenly mixed with uncertainty. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. I addressed the entire room. Every guest, every family member, every business associate. I apologized for ruining this beautiful party my mother so carefully planned, but she just told my father a lie about me. She's been lying for 3 years. About a lot of things. About her affair with Julian Westbrook standing over there by the bar. About helping my brother Theo embezzle nearly $200,000 from Dad's company. About planning to divorce Dad, falsely claim abuse using fabricated evidence, and steal $15 million. About framing me for theft, planting drugs in my car, spreading lies about my mental health, and having me attacked in a parking garage. About all of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Guests started talking all at once, some moving toward exits, others pulling out phones. Mom tried to speak, but no words came out. Theo grabbed Melissa's arm and tried to leave, but Walter appeared in the doorway, blocking their path. "Nobody leaves," Walter said calmly. He held up his FBI credentials. "I'm Walter Cunningham, private investigator and former FBI agent. Federal agents are outside. This is now an active crime scene." Julian made a break for the kitchen exit, but 2 FBI agents were already there. They grabbed him, spun him around, handcuffed him. "Julian Kovac, you're under arrest for money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft," one of them announced. Simone watched from the bar with grim satisfaction as Julian was led away, finally seeing justice after years of planning. Dad stood frozen, looking at me like he didn't recognize me. I pulled the printed evidence folders from where E'd hidden them behind the bar. I handed one to Dad, one to Patricia. "Read them," I said. "Everything's documented. Every bank transfer Mom made moving your assets. Every email between Theo and Julian discussing the embezzlement. Every photo of Mom and Julian together. Every piece of the fake abuse evidence she created. Every single thing they planned to do to you, Dad. To us." Dad opened the folder with shaking hands. His eyes scanned page after page, his face going from red to white to green. Patricia confirmed what he was reading. "I've reviewed everything, Roger. It's all legitimate evidence, admissible in court. I'm so sorry, but your wife and son have been planning this for over 3 years. Hazel spent that entire time investigating, gathering evidence, trying to protect you." Theo finally found his voice. "This is insane! Dad, you can't believe this. It was all Mom's idea." Mom whirled on him. "You came to Emmy about stealing from Dad's company, you little coward. This was your idea. You needed the money for your gambling debts." They turned on each other right there in front of everyone, screaming accusations, each trying to blame the other. The perfect family facade didn't just crack. It exploded into a million pieces. Dad just stood there reading, tears running down his face, his entire world collapsing. He looked at me finally, really looked at me. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice broken. 3 years, Dad. 3 years I watched them plan to destroy you, destroy us. I tried to tell you, but they painted me as unstable. You believed them. I needed ironclad proof or you'd never believe me." He dropped the folder and pulled me into his arms, not caring about the cake covering my dress. He held me tight, both of us crying. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You're my daughter. I should have trusted you. I should have protected you." Around us, FBI agents were taking statements, guests were leaving in shocked clusters, and my mother and brother were being read their rights. The party was over. Their plan was over. Everything was over, but not for me. For me, after 3 years in hell, after being attacked and framed and destroyed, I had finally won. And standing there covered in cake, in my father's arms, surrounded by the ruins of my family, I felt peace for the first time in years. The immediate aftermath was chaos. FBI agents cleared most of the guests from the venue, keeping only those who were directly relevant to the investigation. Dad, still holding the evidence folder, sank into a chair looking like head aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Patricia stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder, speaking quietly to the lead FBI agent. Mom had stopped crying and now sat rigidly upright, staring at nothing, her cream-colored gown stained with champagne from when Shed stumbled during the confrontation. Theo had been separated from her, sitting on the opposite side of the room with an agent taking his statement, and I could hear him from where I stood. He was already trying to negotiate, offering to testify against Mom and Julian in exchange for leniency. Walter appeared beside me with a jacket to put over my cake-covered dress. "You did good," he said quietly. "This was risky, theatrical as hell, but it worked. We have everything we need for prosecution." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me shaky and hollow. Simone joined us, her expression satisfied but tinged with sadness. "Julian's being transported to federal holding," she said. "They found evidence of money laundering for 3 different criminal organizations on his phone, Hez looking at 15 to 20 years. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired and sad for the family we could have been if they'd chosen differently." Dad finally stood and walked over to me. His face was ravaged with grief and guilt. "Hazel, I need to know everything, all of it. Every detail of what you went through, what they did to you." We sat down together while Patricia, Walter, and Simone listened, and I told him the whole story. Every discovery, every piece of evidence I'd found, every attack and frame-up they'd orchestrated against me. I told him about the parking garage assault, about the drugs planted in my car, about them spreading lies that I was mentally ill. I showed him the forged checks from the gallery, explained how Mom had manipulated everyone to isolate me. By the time I finished, Dad was openly weeping. "You went through all of that alone," he said. "While I was believing their lies, pushing you away, you were protecting me, protecting the company. I failed you so completely." I took his hand. You didn't know, Dad. They were convincing. They'd been planning this for years. Mom knew exactly what to say, what to do, to make you doubt me. He shook his head. I'm your father. I should have known. I should have seen. Patricia interjected gently. Roger. Hazel did what she had to do. And now we need to discuss next steps. Legal proceedings, protecting your assets, damage control for the company. Over the next hour, we worked through the logistics. Patricia explained that with the evidence we'd gathered, combined with the FBI's findings on Julian's criminal enterprise, both Mom and Theo would almost certainly face prison time. Constance will be charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft through fraudulent means, and possibly obstruction of justice for framing Hazel. Theodore faces embezzlement charges, money laundering as an accessory, and conspiracy. The prosecution will push for maximum sentences to set precedents in this type of case. She looked at Dad. You'll need to file for divorce immediately. I'll handle it. With everything we have, the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause will hold. Constance gets nothing. Mom, sitting across the room with an agent, must have heard because she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. 28 years, she called out to Dad. 28 years I gave you, and this is what I get? Nothing. Dad's voice was cold when he responded. You gave me lies, Constance. You gave me betrayal. You tried to destroy our daughter, frame her, maybe even have her hurt. You sold out our family for a con artist who was playing you the same way you played me. You don't get sympathy. You don't get anything. Theo tried one more time to appeal to Dad. Dad, please. I can pay it all back. I'll work for free, do whatever you want. I'm your son. Dad looked at him with an expression I'd never seen before. Something beyond anger, beyond hurt. You're not my son anymore. My son wouldn't steal from me, wouldn't conspire to frame his sister, wouldn't help destroy this family for money. Patricia. File charges against Theodore as well. I want full prosecution. Theo's face crumbled. Melissa, who'd been sitting quietly beside him, stood up and walked out without a word, and I knew that relationship was over too. The FBI agents began taking Mom and Theo into custody. They'd be processed tonight, arraigned in the morning, and held pending bail hearings. As they were led toward the door, Mom looked back at me one last time. There was hatred in her eyes, but also something else. Regret, maybe, or recognition of how completely she'd lost. You destroyed your own family, she said. I met her gaze steadily. No, Mom. You destroyed this family 3 years ago when you chose Julian over us. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. 3 months crawled by after that night. The media had a field day with the story. Society wife's affair and theft plot, exposed at daughter's birthday party, ran in the local papers. National outlets picked it up because of Julian's connection to organized crime. Dad's company took a hit in reputation initially, but Patricia's crisis management and Dad's complete transparency with his business partners actually strengthened relationships in the long run. Roger Richardson was a victim, became the narrative, and his daughter was a hero who saved him. Mom pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted grand theft as part of a plea deal. The prosecutors had so much evidence that fighting would have meant a much longer sentence. She got 4 years in a minimum security federal prison. Her lawyer argued for leniency based on her being manipulated by Julian, and the judge gave some weight to that argument. She'd be eligible for parole in 3 years with good behavior. Theo also took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to embezzlement and conspiracy, was sentenced to 3 years, and was ordered to pay full restitution to Dad's company. The money he'd stolen was recovered from the offshore accounts where Julian had hidden it. Theo would never work in real estate again. His professional reputation was destroyed. Julian's trial was still pending when I last checked, but Walter kept me updated. Julian faced up to 15 years for his multi-state con operation and money laundering charges. Natasha, his Seattle girlfriend, testified against him, as did 2 other women he'd victimized in Boston and Miami. Simone finally got her justice. She sat through every day of the preliminary hearings, watching the man who destroyed her life be systematically dismantled by the justice system. Thank you, she told me after one hearing. I couldn't have done this without you. You gave me back my power. We'd become genuine friends through this process, bonded by trauma and triumph. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. He sold the family house because neither of us could stand to be there anymore. Too many memories of lies and betrayal. He bought a smaller condo in the Pearl District with a view of the city we both loved. We started having weekly dinners, just the two of us, really talking for the first time in years. He told me about the early days with Mom, how vibrant and wonderful she'd been before something hardened in her. I told him about my dreams for the gallery, my art, my life. We were healing together. I returned to the gallery after Mrs. Foster, and the board reviewed Patricia's evidence clearing me of any theft. Adelaide Foster apologized profusely, explained that Mom had been very convincing with her forged checks, and asked me to come back as assistant director with a significant raise. The gallery became my refuge, my joy, proof that I'd survived and thrived despite everything. Dad invested in the gallery as a silent partner, helping us expand. We opened a second location, focused on emerging artists, and I found purpose in helping new talent get recognition. I even found love again, though I was cautious about it. Grant Blackwell was a federal prosecutor who'd worked peripherally on Julian's case. Walter introduced us at a celebratory dinner after Mom and Theo's sentencing. Grant was thoughtful, patient, kind, and he understood trauma in ways most people didn't. He worked with victims of financial crimes daily and knew how betrayal could shatter trust. We took things slowly, coffee dates that became dinners, dinners that became weekend hikes and art gallery visits. He never pushed, never demanded, just waited for me to be ready. 6 months in, I was ready. We moved in together a year after the birthday party, into a bright apartment in the Alberta Arts District, and I felt safe for the first time in years. Now, standing in my kitchen on a Sunday evening preparing dinner for Dad's visit, I reflected on how far I'd come. A year ago, I'd been covered in cake on the floor of an event space, laughing while my family imploded. Now I had a career I loved, a partner who respected me, a father I trusted again, and peace. Dad arrived right on time, bringing flowers and wine and his easy smile that had returned over the months. We cooked together, something we'd never done when I was growing up, and talked about everything and nothing. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked over dinner. Serious suddenly. How it all happened, exposing them at the party, instead of privately. I thought about it carefully. "I regret that it had to happen at all," I said finally. "I regret that Mom and Theo chose betrayal over family. I regret the pain it caused you, the public humiliation, the media circus. But do I regret exposing them? No. They would have destroyed you, Dad. They would have taken everything you built and left you broken and probably facing false criminal charges. And they already tried to destroy me, to institutionalize me, to erase me. Someone had to stop them." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're the strongest person I know. You're my hero, Hazel." We finished dinner and settled on the couch with coffee, talking late into the evening like we used to do when I was young and the world seemed simple. I told him about a new artist the gallery had signed, about Grant's recent promotion, about my plans to maybe teach an art history class at the community college. He talked about a new development project, about reconnecting with old friends he'd neglected during his marriage, about finding joy in simple things. As he was leaving, he hugged me tight at the door. "I love you," he said. "I'm so sorry for the years I wasted believing their lies instead of believing in you." I hugged him back. "We're building something better now, Dad. Something real." After he left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights, Grant coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. I thought about that night a year ago, covered in cake and surrounded by shattered glass and broken family bonds. I'd laughed then, not because anything was funny, but because I'd finally won. They'd tried to break me, frame me, destroy me, erase me from my own family. Instead, I became unbreakable. I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, honesty, and choosing each other every day. My mother and brother chose money and betrayal. They chose to wear masks their whole lives, to be strangers even to themselves. But Dad and I, we found something real in the ruins. We built a relationship based on truth, on surviving together, on refusing to let betrayal define us. That night at my birthday party, I didn't just expose criminals. I freed us both from a family built on lies. And that, ultimately, was the greatest victory of all. Not revenge, though that was satisfying. Not justice, though that mattered. But freedom. Freedom from pretending, from toxic people, from the weight of carrying someone else's secrets. I was free, Dad was free, and we were finally, truly family. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to make an impossible choice between protecting someone you love and exposing a painful truth? Drop your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you handled it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt betrayed by family or fought to prove your innocence when everyone doubted you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because I share stories of survival, resilience, and people who refuse to be broken. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand up for the truth, even when it costs everything. Thank you for listening to my story, for being here, for understanding that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayal. May you always have the courage to choose truth over comfort, and may you find peace in the ruins. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember that you're stronger than you know.